The U.S. nuclear submarine surfaces among the Chinese fleet. Immediate reaction follows. The South China Sea is not just an expanse of water, it's one of the most critical hubs of global influence. Here lie routes connecting the markets of Asia, Europe, and America, with trillions of dollars in oil and gas resources hidden beneath its waters. This region is where the interests of numerous countries collide, especially those of China and the United States, both vying to establish their military and political presence. Such rivalry has long turned the South China Sea into a global hotspot where any confrontation could spiral into a serious international crisis. Remember the famous words of the ancient Greek mathematician Archimedes? "Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I will move the world." For China, the South China Sea represents that leverage, a means to potentially shift the balance of global power and push the U.S. from its pedestal as the world's dominant force. If America were to give ground here, perhaps allowing China to take Taiwan, it would only lead to further concessions down the line. But why not make the South China Sea a fulcrum for American influence as well? How might the U.S. accomplish this? There are several possible scenarios. For example, imagine an American submarine surfacing right in the midst of the Chinese fleet. What would follow such a bold move? And why could such an audacious maneuver further solidify the U.S.'s status as a global leader? Watch this video until the end to find out. Let's paint this scenario in more detail. The U.S. submarine patrolling covertly finds itself within the area of a Chinese military exercise. What kind of submarine might this be? Several classes of American nuclear submarines operate in the South China Sea. It could be one of the 4 Ohio-class submarines converted to carry up to 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Or perhaps a Virginia-class attack submarine equipped for multi-purpose operations, including reconnaissance and anti-submarine warfare. Then there's the Seawolf class, the most advanced in the world. These submarines are known for their stealth and powerful armament, making them ideal for deep-sea operations. In October 2021, for instance, the USS Connecticut, a Seawolf-class submarine, collided with an underwater mountain in the South China Sea, leading to serious damage and injuries among its crew. While the official story was navigational error, some speculated it hit an artificial undersea structure created by the Chinese as part of their island building for military bases. But could a U.S. submarine even slip undetected into the center of the Chinese fleet? Many would say no, given the Chinese ship's advanced sonar and detection equipment. Yet American submarines, especially the Virginia and Seawolf classes, are engineered with high stealth and cutting-edge technology designed specifically to avoid detection. Consider events from a quarter century ago. On August 12, 2000, during a Russian Navy exercise in the Barents Sea, the Russian nuclear submarine Kursk exploded. The official explanation was an onboard torpedo explosion. However, multiple sources reported that American submarines, the Memphis and the Toledo, both Los Angeles class, were in the area, and that the latter might have collided with the Kursk, triggering the torpedo's detonation. Adding weight to this theory, the U.S. granted Russia a significant loan on favorable terms that same year. 6 years later, the Toledo needed costly repairs due to 2 fractures in its hull. Some might argue that the Russian Navy of 2000, weakened by economic hardship, is no comparison to China's modern fleet. But Virginia and Seawolf-class submarines represent a new level of stealth, far surpassing the capabilities of the older Los Angeles class. So an American sub could indeed remain undetected and surface in the middle of a Chinese fleet. But what would the White House gain by provoking China like this? We're excluding scenarios where the sub surfaced accidentally near Chinese ships. That's extremely unlikely. Typically, it's China that intercepts American reconnaissance planes over disputed areas, with Chinese spy ships frequently getting dangerously close to U.S. military vessels. So why would a U.S. submarine deliberately position itself in the heart of the Chinese fleet in the South China Sea? At first glance, this sounds like something out of a spy thriller or a provocation tailor-made for global headlines. But in reality, it's a high-stakes strategy intertwining strategic ambitions, tense diplomatic relations, and historical grievances. In this region, which has become a proving ground for displays of strength, the U.S. and China are engaged in a game of maritime chess where actual submarines and warships are at play and errors could be fatal. Both countries are playing a risky game in the South China Sea, with each side continuously escalating its military presence and conducting strategic posturing. For the U.S., such an incident would be a way to demonstrate to the world that it's unafraid of China, willing to up the ante and firmly standing by its allies and values. China's actions in the South China Sea threaten the security of Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and of course Taiwan. After such an incident, it'd be crucial for the U.S. administration to handle Beijing's likely outrage carefully. But what would China's immediate response look like? When an American submarine suddenly surfaces amid the Chinese fleet, Beijing's reaction would be immediate, resolute, and uncompromising. To China, this wouldn't be just a maneuver in maritime space, but a bold infringement on its sovereignty, a daring challenge right at its doorstep. Chinese commanders would view the surfacing U.S. submarine not as a harmless guest, but as a provocateur brazenly testing China's limits. With tension running high, every detail becomes a potential trigger, and China's reaction would focus on showcasing its strength. The first step would be an immediate mobilization by the Chinese military. The crews would be on high alert. An enemy submarine in close proximity requires immediate containment and potential neutralization. Ships would converge around the submarine, cutting off escape routes and preparing for any escalation. Helicopters would be dispatched overhead, monitoring the area and tracking every move. There's no way the Chinese would allow the American sub to leave unscathed. Doing so would be seen as a humiliation. But China's response wouldn't be limited to military maneuvers. Chinese officials would issue firm statements denouncing the infringement on national sovereignty, accusing the U.S. of provocation. The Chinese government would immediately raise its stance in international forums, proclaiming that America's actions threaten regional peace and set a dangerous precedent. Chinese media and state channels would amplify this message, mobilizing public opinion against the perceived external threat. Would China escalate further? Likely, but cautiously. No one wants global conflict. However, to avoid appearing weak, China might conduct large-scale military exercises, deploy additional forces to the region, and warn against further U.S. military operations in the South China Sea. And how should Washington respond? When news of a U.S. submarine surfacing among the Chinese fleet in the South China Sea reaches the Pentagon, a series of coordinated responses would follow. First, the U.S. would control the narrative, positioning the incident as a routine patrol or an act of ensuring maritime freedom. U.S. officials would assert that the submarine's presence was lawful and in accordance with international law. On the diplomatic front, U.S. officials would engage with Chinese counterparts, emphasizing that the sub was operating in international waters and posed no threat. This stance would counter China's accusations, underscoring America's commitment to defending its principles. Any sign of retreat or concession would harm the U.S.'s global standing, a reality the Pentagon fully understands. To reinforce its presence, the U.S. might then dispatch additional naval assets, conduct joint exercises with allies, and increase aerial patrols. America would send a clear message. It has no intention of withdrawing, and any aggression from China will be met with a powerful response. From this incident, it's clear the U.S. would gain more than China. America would have shown the world it's prepared to defend its interests firmly anywhere on the planet. Despite any posturing by China, the fact remains, America would come out on top unless China dared to risk open war. And this brings us to another question. What are the risks and consequences of such an incident? An American submarine surfacing amid the Chinese fleet in the South China Sea is more than just an isolated event. It's a spark that could ignite a global diplomatic crisis or even bring the world to the brink of a military confrontation between two nuclear powers. The risks are real, and any miscalculation could lead to severe escalation. Imagine the reaction among Chinese sailors and commanders as an American submarine, one of the most lethal military assets, appears in their midst. In a heightened state of alert, the Chinese forces might interpret this as an act of aggression, potentially escalating the standoff. This situation could become more dangerous than the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The tensions in the region would undoubtedly intensify, with nations like Japan, South Korea, and Australia potentially increasing their military presence, further fueling the arms race and leading the world closer to a breaking point. Economic consequences would also be severe. The South China Sea is a vital global trade route, with millions of tons of goods passing through daily. In times of conflict, insurance rates would skyrocket, and shipping companies might reroute, leading to higher costs for fuel, goods, and consumer products globally. Additionally, the incident would likely accelerate China's cooperation with Russia and other countries dissatisfied with American influence. The world would become increasingly polarized, with growing tensions on all fronts. So is this risk worth taking? While it's a complex question, one thing's certain. If the U.S. backs down in East Asia after its rapid withdrawal from Afghanistan, it risks losing its status as the global leader, and with it, the status of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. What do you think? Should the U.S. take decisive steps to defend its global leadership? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more.